Hello and welcome, I'm Riz Khan. 1 million dead or wounded. That's the figure reported by the Wall Street Journal as an estimate of the total number of casualties suffered by both sides on the battlefield during 1,000 days of war between Russia and Ukraine. Well, amid changes in the leadership of both the US government and the NATO military alliance, the milestone was reached at a time of uncertainty. In the days which followed, a spiral of escalatory claims and counterclaims fueled the fears of a global nuclear conflict. Russia has threatened to use its new hypersonic missiles against Ukrainian decision-making centers. A newly unleashed Ukraine continues to make use of American and European long-range missiles inside Russia. Both sides are now maneuvering for position ahead of January the 20th, when a new president, armed with his peace plan, enters the White House. And Donald Trump's appointment of his special envoy for Ukraine and Russia completes the team sheet of names that he wants to help him end the conflict. In this episode, I'll speak with influential voices from both Russia and Ukraine. But my first guest looks after military matters in the Baltic state of Latvia. Andris Spruds is the defense minister of a nation that's a NATO member, whose government is a prominent voice in support of Ukraine and shares a border with Russia. And he's spoken in support of extending conscription for women in the years ahead. Minister, it's good to have you on the show. Let me start by asking, what is Latvia's response to the fast-moving developments in the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Yes, thank you for having me. What we see, of course, it is a continuous brutality of Russian forces. What we see also, of course, intimidation by Russian forces and by Russian posture. So, of course, it once more underlines importance of NATO, the Western community, global community supporting Ukraine. Because if we don't support Ukraine right now, the costs will be higher in the future.
Do you think the cycle of escalation has moved the world any closer to nuclear war than at any point in recent time?
We see escalation. We see additional blackmailing. We see additional nuclear rhetoric as well, I would say, unfortunately. Of course, it also demonstrates the fragility and challenges of the global security order. And also we see that there are authoritarian revisionist countries which are exactly using that kind of rhetoric. At the same time, I would not overestimate the scenario and nuclear Armageddon can take place. I still believe that there is some common sense. There is very clear signals also from NATO side. NATO is a nuclear alliance. Consequences would be extremely high, and I would say, first of all, extremely high for those countries and those authoritarian leaders which are using that kind of blackmailing.
The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said there's a real risk of global conflict, especially now that Iran and North Korea are more involved. Do you share this assessment, and what concern is there that Latvia could become a frontline, considering it shares a 300-kilometer border with Russia?
We see turmoil in the global security order. Of course, it concerns us. I think it concerns everyone who is interested in stability, who is interested in rules-based international order, in sovereignty of nations. So that's why, of course, there are a lot of concerns, what we see around the globe. And in those kind of circumstances, certainly some of the countries are willing somehow to become revisionist countries. And again, this is very unfortunate for all of us, and especially also for those revisionist countries themselves. As for Latvia, we are part of the most successful defensive alliance. It is not about security of Latvia, because we must remember Latvia is part of NATO, which means that security of Latvia is also security of NATO. There is one NATO. And in this regard, of course, we are all doing the necessary homework nationally, but of course also together with our international partners, our international allies within NATO alliance, which is defensive alliance, which is ready to defend, which is ready to deter, which is ready, of course, to support also the countries which fight for its freedom and rules-based international order.
Germany has drawn up a list of bunkers to protect its citizens in the case of any attack. Apart from NATO membership, as you were discussing, what steps has Latvia taken to help protect its citizens?
Well, we are ready for different kind of hybrid activities. We already see the hybrid warfare for some time, so this is nothing new for us. The weaponization of illegal migration, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, incidents against critical infrastructure. But that's why, of course, we as society must be ready for different kind of scenarios. And I absolutely can underline we are ready. We are ready in society, on societal level, we are ready among institutions. And of course, we cooperate closely with our allies, with also institutions from our partner countries. Of course, this is a important work which should be done nationally, but also in a joint effort to preclude from any kind of negative scenarios, any kind of sabotage and hybrid warfare activities from our adversaries.
Why did Latvia reintroduce military service for men last year? And what's been the response to your suggestion that women also might be conscripted at some point soon?
Yes, we reintroduced conscription. It was supported widely by society. We realize that if we discuss, and not only discuss, but if we implement comprehensive defense approach, everybody is involved in comprehensive defense approach. And this is also a position of our neighboring countries. We see conscription all around the region. And this actually also refers to the question of women. Women are part of course, part of the comprehensive defense. Every individual, every human being also in Latvia, of course, contributes to our defensive abilities. And we see example here in Sweden, Norway, Denmark recently also introduced compulsory service for women. So here, absolutely, we underline importance of comprehensive defense. I would say the Baltic Nordic regional model, and also the, of course, equality of rights and responsibilities for all genders.
There is a fear among some in the Baltic states and other former Soviet nations that Russia is trying to create a split within each country between those citizens of Russian origin and the rest of the population, and even among politicians who are pro-Russian or anti-Russian. What chance is there Russia could create that kind of division in your country?
Well, of course, Russia can attempt and try different kind of means and measures to split and to divide. And I think this has been part of the Russian hybrid activities, again, for years. Of course, we are a democratic country, which means that there is diversity of opinions, diversity of political parties as well. And we are proud of it, that we have this diversity. At the same time, on the fundamental issues, sovereignty, freedom, democracy, supporting Ukraine, there is no split in Latvian society. Yes, there is some legacy of the Soviet Empire. Unfortunately, there are some minority groups within society which sometimes seems to be still living in the past. It could be acknowledged, but absolute wide majority among Latvia's population, including Russian-speaking population, are loyal, patriotic, supportive of NATO, supportive of course, of being a member of European Union, also supporting Ukraine.
European officials are investigating what they believe is sabotage of underwater cables in the Baltic Sea, including a connection between Lithuania and Sweden and Finland and Germany. What information are you getting about this issue and what's being described as a hybrid warfare being waged by Russia against the West? What can you do to avoid something similar affecting Latvia?
There is hybrid warfare in the region. Absolutely, this is without any doubt. And Russia wages this hybrid warfare activity. I would be a bit more careful exactly specifically on this incident because still some investigation must be completed to make specific already the conclusions. But yes, we are partly facing those challenges of defending, protecting our critical infrastructure. It's not easy. Let's be again straightforward because we see cables hundreds of kilometers and you cannot keep the warship above every cable, every place. This is, of course, also understandable. But additional monitoring, additional cooperation among institutions, additional flag appearance, also showing the NATO presence in the region. Also, of course, additionally adding warships and patrolling. This, of course, has been done and must be done. And of course, additional monitoring is certainly the key response to this.
I presume that's in response to Britain's warning that Russia is preparing to use cyber attacks on critical infrastructure against European nations supporting Ukraine in this conflict.
You are absolutely right. We've been facing cyber attacks again for years. 3 Baltic countries, if we look at some specific cyber attacks, 30%, almost 1/3 of cyber attacks against European Union, they are targeting exactly 3 Baltic countries. So we already built a strong wall of resilience. against cyber attacks, but it is an ongoing process. It is ongoing homework to improve our resilience, to improve our reaction time, to improve our, in a sense, the wall against any such kind of detrimental activities by Russia. And it should be put straightforwardly, by Russia first of all.
Now, Minister, NATO's leading military officer, Admiral Rob Bauer, has warned European businesses that they have a role to play in preparing for a wartime scenario. Is that the case in Latvia too?
Yes, in Latvia, absolutely. We are much more ready, I guess, as some other countries, but I would still say the glass is half full rather than half empty. I think there is this understanding what takes place in Ukraine. It has a real dire and long-term consequences. That it means also adjustment and readjustment how we deal with Russia. So we cannot come back to some kind of business as usual or business as previous. It also means that we need certainly to actively cooperate and enhance our military industry. Also, businesses have critical role to play here, and they are playing this role, including in Latvia. We are very strongly, of course, putting emphasis on our own military industry, which involves the business community. But it's not only about military industry, it's in general. So that, of course, we must reorient any connections with countries which can use economic tool as a political and strategic tool of intimidation and pressure. Of course, this should be taken care of.
Now, Minister, this week there was a fatal plane crash in your neighbour, Lithuania, and there are suspicions of Russian sabotage. What do you know about that?
Well, again, so there are specific investigation procedures. I would not rush with pre-assumptions or speculations on this. But of course, once more, it underlines how important it is to protect all domains of our life, be it in the sea, be it in the air. So it is once more underlining the importance of resilience, importance of readiness, importance of understanding what we are facing, that we should be ready for different scenarios, and also very importantly, that we should strongly communicate with our societies and explain as much as possible to keep the safety and security feeling always present, even though realizing that we live in quite insecure and challenging times.
Minister, I wonder what impact the potential threat from Russia has had on bolstering collaboration between European nations that share a border with Russia, such as yours.
Absolutely. It has bolstered cooperation. We've seen also, of course, and we very much welcome the NATO membership for Sweden and Finland, which means also that the region is much more strongly interconnected in terms of military, in terms of economic, political cooperation, even though it was strong already before. But common adversary or understanding of strategically common threat, it is always unifying countries. For all of us, being, in many ways on the front line with Russia means that we have to strengthen our defense lines. We should cooperate. We should build a shield on a border. We should defend every inch of NATO territory, and every inch of NATO territory starts exactly in our countries. And that's why also mutual cooperation among us is instrumental, very important, and is also developing.
Well, there's an unusual situation in your region, Minister, and that's the issue of the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad, a small territory on the Baltic, cut off from Russia, surrounded by Poland and Lithuania, and requiring access through Lithuania, Latvia or Belarus to reach the Russian border. And there have been tensions since Lithuania announced it would halt the transport of EU-sanctioned goods coming from Russia en route to Kaliningrad. What are the potential consequences of this move?
Well, of course, this should be still discussed. I guess it also once more underlines that Russia has its vulnerabilities. Naturally, Kaliningrad is also its, or Kaliningrad enclave or oblast region. It is a vulnerability also strategically for Russia. And it should be always reminded to Russia as well that also for Russia to somehow to have constructive relationships with its neighbors, it is in their long-term interests. So that's why, of course, it is also the Lithuania's decision. It is also, of course, a common decision within the European Union. But I believe that if Lithuania decides that there are security concerns and security risks due to this transit, then I would assume there is an absolute legitimate right to exactly make such kind of relevant decisions.
Now, Ukraine was recently given the green light by the United States, the UK and France to strike military targets further inside Russia. Was this a necessary step in your view?
It was necessary. We welcome that decision. Latvia, of course, also supports Ukraine strongly, once more also because of those reasons that this is about a long-term consequences for the global security, about rules-based international order. And if Ukrainian people are being hit by Russian rockets, by Russian missiles, and Ukraine cannot respond, of course, this is not a right situation. So we absolutely believe that this is the right for Ukraine to defend itself, defend itself against Russian aggression, to protect its people, and to destroy legitimate military targets, the basis from which those attacks against Ukrainian civilians are being targeted. So that's why, yes, Latvia supports it and welcomes, and actually invites even to do more and more speedily, with a more sense of urgency. This has been done, but it could have been done, that kind of decision could have been taken even earlier. Latvia itself, of course, supplies also Ukraine with weapons. It supplies also with training. Latvia is also co-leading with UK in a drone coalition, which is of course also very important in the new technology war. And we will be continuously supporting Ukraine with 0.25% from our GDP, exactly for military expenditures, military support.
Well, now Russia responded by using its new Oreshnik intermediary range hypersonic missile, and President Putin said that was a warning to the West. What message did you take from this?
This is a brutal intimidation. It is an intimidation by Russia. This is Russian traditional approach. If something is not according to Russia's plan, so it starts to intimidate its neighbors and starts to intimidate, let's say, other nations. So, of course, in this situation, this once more just underlines importance of Ukraine being allowed to target legitimate targets in Russia and supporting Ukraine constantly, because, well, intimidation must not be prevailing in international relations among sovereign nations.
Will these weapons systems have a significant impact on altering the current situation, where Ukraine's been losing territory that it holds in Russia's Kursk region, while Russians have been steadily gaining ground in the east of the country?
Well, every day is decisive in Ukraine's fight for its freedom. And of course, let's not immediately fall into the traps that everything is going bad. Of course, we can realize that there are a lot of challenges and difficulties. There is sort of, if we may say, Russia's advantage to absolute disregard for human life, also disregard for its own soldiers' human life. But at the same time, exactly because of those reasons, because of that intimidation, Ukraine must be given all weapons to protect itself, also hitting legitimate targets on Russian soil.
Just a final thought, Minister. Eyes are turning to the USA, where the incoming Trump administration says it wants some kind of peace deal. And very recently, Michael Waltz, Donald Trump's nominee for National Security Advisor, said the war needs to come to a, quote, responsible end. And the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, has also said that he wants a fair deal. What do you think a responsible and fair deal looks like, and what compromises have to be made in order to reach it?
Exactly. All of us would like to see the peace in our region, and of course, not people dying because of some imperialistic ambitions. That's why we also welcome that there is, of course, aspiration for a deal. But once more, it is important that the deal has been achieved from positions of strength. So we must jointly speak and act from positions of strength. This is crucial. And as Volodymyr Zelensky, as president of Ukraine, has said, yes, exactly, it must be a fair and just deal, which means that it must be the deal defined above all also by Ukraine. It cannot be a deal which is imposed on Ukraine. So Ukrainian people fight for their freedom. They've been supported, rightly so. They fight in many ways for freedom and values for all of us. And that's why, of course, this fair and just deal is above all defined by Ukrainian side. Liberating territories, the war criminals paying also, let us say, the responsibilities for what has been done. So, of course, this would be a fair deal for Ukrainian people. But above all, it is Ukrainian nation decides what is fair and just deal. So nothing should be made without also consent of Ukrainian.
Well, Minister Andris Spruds, thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So how's all this being viewed from Moscow? Let's get a perspective from the Russian Member of Parliament, Evgeny Popov. He also presents the popular primetime current affairs show 60 Minutes that airs on the state-owned Russia One network. Evgeny, good to have you back on the show. Now, following the recent developments in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, both the green light given to Ukraine to strike inside Russia and, of course, the Kremlin's response with the use of new hypersonic missiles, how much closer is the world to nuclear war?
I thank you for giving me your floor, and I don't think we are pretty close to the full-scale nuclear war, because it's many steps away in forward on stair of escalation, and we just going up on the stair step by step to the nuclear war. But I don't think that we have that there are much insane politics in Europe and in the United States, which want to be blown up in a nuclear war. That's why I think we are closer to the negotiations than to the nuclear war.
I'll touch on that a little bit as the show goes on, but President Putin suggested the use of this new Oreshnik missile was a warning to the West. What do you think will happen if the West doesn't listen to this warning?
It's hard to say for me, because I'm not a guy from military Ministry of Defense, but I think it was important warning from Russia to any countries who thinks that we're not going to respond to the escalations. It was a signal to the West, to Washington, to London, to Paris, which is already using their missiles against historically Russian territory. It was hard signal, and I think it was it being heard in Western capitals, but I don't think that Ukraine and Washington will stop using the missiles again against our territory. But on every step which Washington or this lame duck administration will do, we have respond. But it's better for us to be on a table, on a table of negotiations rather than using new type of weapon.
Well, with someone of your senior position and contacts, I know you follow things closely and are party to a lot of information. I wonder, from that perspective, do you see such weapons being used to strike US bases in Poland or military targets on the French or British soil for their supplying of Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles if things escalate?
I think it depends of targets inside Russia territory. And I think it depends of, unfortunately, insane administration in Washington, D.C. right now. Of course, we can attack in response some Western military bases, but it would be historical decision, I would say, because right now we are already at war with NATO countries, with some part of NATO. We are at war with France, we are at war with Great Britain, and we are at war with the United States. Because they are using their missiles, long-range missiles, against our constitutional and historic territory. But I can't say you would we use our long-range missiles against the Western military bases? If we will have no choice, of course we will do it. But I don't think what will be this step different with full-scale nuclear conflict, because it would be World War III, and World War III would be will be, of course, nuclear war, and no one will left on this planet, maybe. I don't know.
Evgeny, on your popular TV show, you've indicated a doomsday scenario to show how Russian nuclear weapons would be able to obliterate European cities and civilization with just a few missiles. And of course, Russian cities are also vulnerable to the same fate from Western nuclear weapons. Do people in Russia share Western fears of a nuclear escalation, or do they find reassurance in the nuclear deterrent?
You know, Russian people has just one goal: security guarantees, and we will get it on the battlefield or during negotiations. But right now, it's a dangerous phase of the conflict, because no, just a few red lines ahead. Which is the West didn't cancel or didn't destroy. Of course, every people on this planet scared or afraid of nuclear war, because I'm sure that it will be no winner in any kind of nuclear conflict. That's why there aren't insane politicians in Russia which is wanted to use some nuclear missile against Western countries. But right now, we don't have other choice than respond mirror, like a mirror. If you use long-range missile against our territory, what should we do? It's a difficult question, and I don't know exact answer on it. But if the United States using a long-range missile, American long-range missile against our territory, should we use Russians long-range missiles against US territory? If you thinking by logic, yes, we can use it, but I don't think it will happen in nearest future.
Well, you know, Evgeny, President Putin has threatened to use nuclear weapons on multiple occasions, but throughout the conflict. But some have dismissed these as empty threats and empty remarks because it would increase the risk of Armageddon for both sides. And why would any world leader choose to inflict that on his own people?
You know, Reese, I would ask you, don't live in a world of myths. President Putin never threatened to anybody with a nuclear weapon. We've never threatened to use our nuclear weapon against any countries. We have a doctrine which is allow us to use our nuclear weapon in response of using nuclear weapon against our territory. Or if we have huge threat to our sovereignty, to our freedoms, to our state, that's it. We can't threat anybody to use a nuclear weapon first, you know? And That's why it's a hard decision, and we're thinking for a long time how to respond,
right.
because it's so dangerous right now. We are really live in the most dangerous time ever, I think. It's more dangerous than Caribbean crisis. It's more dangerous than I don't know, World War I.
Right. You know, Evgeny, you make an interesting point about the use of language, and you know the word escalation is being used by both sides to justify new developments in the war. Now, President Putin described America's permission to use longer distance missiles as an escalation, which justifies, of course, his response in changing nuclear protocols and firing the hypersonic missile. But then the West has cited Russia's attacks on civilian infrastructure, its use of Iranian drones, North Korean missiles, and now thousands of North Korean troops as examples of escalation by Russia. So is the idea of escalation now meaningless when it's being used like this?
In my head, there is no idea of escalation. I think we should get security guarantees for Russia and the Russian people as soon as possible, again, on the battlefield or during the negotiations. Of course, right now we can see some recklessness decisions by Biden's administration, which is 2 months left in the White House. But if we're talking about escalation, follow some decisions. Mr. Biden told us that he is allowed to use long-range missiles, American long-range missiles, in response of North Korean soldiers in Kursk region. But would you tell me who saw North Korean soldiers in Kursk region? Even Pentagon doubt about those soldiers exist on our soil. I've been in the Kursk region a few days ago. I didn't see any Koreans, North Koreans, and South Koreans as well. No logic, no North Korean soldiers in Kursk region, but Biden allowed to use long-range missiles against our territory. Then we use new hypersonic missile, just one new hypersonic missile, which is, of course, high technology, and it was with no new nuke, without nuclear weapon, without nuclear warheads. We used it not against civilian infrastructure. It was used against military infrastructure, against a military plant, Yuzhmash. That's why we just, in the place of responding, we are responding on Western insane decisions.
I understood, yeah.
We are not running ahead of the West on this stair of escalation.
Understood, Evgeny. I just want to confirm. So I know you say you haven't seen North Korean soldiers, but are you saying they definitely haven't been used by on behalf of Russia?
I don't know. It's a myth. We don't have any confirmation from our military of defense. We don't have any confirmations from our war correspondents. We don't have any confirmation from locals. Try to hide 10,000 people in any territory. You can't do it. You couldn't do it. Nobody found it. Nobody saw it. It's like a myth for me. But the main point is that we don't need North Korean soldiers right now. We have enough recruits. Enough. We have more soldiers than Ukrainians has right now. It was a different situation just a year ago. I didn't know for what reason we need North Koreans.
Well, I was going to say, the Financial Times has reported that Yemen's Houthis are also recruiting mercenaries to fight on behalf of Russia. NATO, the US, and the West is reporting that there are killed North Korean soldiers on the battlefield as well. That's why, of course, that story has come out. Now, political and military leaders in the West are desperately trying to anticipate what Donald Trump might do. Do you think the Kremlin actually knows what his plan is? And do you know whether or not President Putin and President-elect Trump have actually spoken since the election?
It was clear from Kremlin administration that we don't have any. We didn't have any call and negotiations between Trump and Putin after he was elected as president. No way. And we don't have. I don't have any information about his plans. I have heard his promise that he will finish this conflict during 24 he will finish this conflict during 24 hours. But I'm not sure he can do it. And don't overestimate the United States. They can't do less than they promise for many years.
You know, Evgeny, just to put it into perspective, thanks, but putting it in perspective, Donald Trump's nominee for National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz, suggested just recently that the incoming administration wishes to bring this war to a responsible end. Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky himself also said what he wants is a fair peace deal. So what does a fair peace deal look like from a Russian perspective?
We have official Kremlin position about this, and we have heard Putin in Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the end of the summer. It was clear that we need security guarantees for Russia and the Russian people. We need to get all our constitutional territories, and we need to get guarantees from the West that Ukraine will not be in NATO alliance.
You know, it's interesting when you look at the two key players on both sides now. President-elect Trump is known as a deal maker who only wants to win. President Putin is known as an equally tough negotiator who doesn't want to lose. So when it comes to striking a peace deal regarding Ukraine, who's going to come out on top? Who wins such a battle? Why?
Our soldiers will win this war and this battle, because if you look on the battlefield, you will see that we're going forward every day, and we capture villages, new villages every day. And now time is on our side, of course, and we will destroy Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian army in our Kursk region, I hope very soon, until New Year. And I don't believe at any deal which possible in the next few months. Me personally, maybe it's possible, but I can't find any conditions which we will agree, except those I told you a minute ago. Right. We have to get our territories. We have to get security guarantees, and we have to get no NATO Ukraine.
Okay, so, you know, I want to get your perspective, Evgeny, on something that's in the news at the moment. The Russian state news agency TASS quotes a military source as saying what they call a UK mercenary who's been taken prisoner in the Kursk area of Russia, part of which, of course, Ukraine has held since launching that surprise offensive in August. Now, that mercenary has been named as 22-year-old James Scott Rees-Anderson. From your perspective, what kind of punishment does he face in Russia if he is charged?
No, it's years of prison, and he's not first and he's not last. He will be lucky if he will be subject of exchange. It will be the best for him to be exchanged on our guys who've been captured by Ukrainians. But dozens UK citizens were captured by our army during this conflict. US citizens, Colombian citizens, guys from most of the Western and America's countries. That's nothing new on this news. But what's new? He was first who've been captured in our historical territories. We captured him in Kursk region. That is new, but we've seen before a lot of foreigners which been captured by our army.
Evgeny, as we wrap up, I have to ask you, after Donald Trump won the election, why did your TV show run a segment that purported to congratulate his wife Melania's return to the White House by showing a series of nude and semi-naked pictures of her? You look like you were having fun with it, but was that designed to humiliate the president-elect, and isn't there a risk of provoking him?
We're doing news for Russians and for Russian-speaking people. And of course, Melania is a respectable woman. He didn't do any bad for Russians, and she's beautiful. Why shouldn't we show her? We got those pictures from open sources, from old magazines. It's a usual work for journalists to show what we have.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, Evgeny, and I'm looking forward to having a chance to chat with you as, of course, the story develops. Evgeny Popov, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Well, my final guest today is the Ukrainian Member of Parliament, Oleksiy Goncharenko. His father was the mayor of Odessa, one of the cities that has come under intense Russian bombardment in recent days. I wanted to get his take on the mood in Ukraine in light of recent escalations, and also his reaction to Donald Trump's choice of special envoy for Ukraine. Oleksiy Goncharenko, thank you for joining the show. Now, I'll start by asking you, what do you make of President-elect Donald Trump's choice of the retired General Keith Kellogg as his special envoy to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict?
Yeah, I think this is a very good choice. I welcome this choice, and from all options, I think this is a very strong choice. General Kellogg, first of all, is a very experienced person. Secondly, he is in the context, and he is strong and hawkish on Iran, on China, on Russia, and that is good because all these axes of powers, which includes these countries, they understand only language of strength. And I think that General Kellogg is capable for this.
Now, when it comes to the new administration, we know now Donald Trump's picks for Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, National Security. Does that group present a more or less hopeful prospect than many feared during the election campaign when J.D. Vance said he didn't care what happened to Ukraine?
You know, for me, it's more optimistic because all the people you mentioned, especially Senator Rubio, whom I know personally, really strong and very good. And next, National Security Advisor Waltz, also very good. So I think it shows that these people are strong and that President-elect Trump is trying to take the best possible people. And I think that they can do a very good job.
Well, Mr. Goncharenko, how should Donald Trump approach negotiations with President Vladimir Putin, and how should President Zelensky approach talks with either of them?
I will allow myself to give some advices just because I really know what Russia is. And the main advice is to be strong. Peace through strength. That's the only way, because Putin does not understand anything else in the world. Anything else. The second thing, don't believe Putin. When Putin is saying something, it means nothing. That's you need to remember. And the third advice is not to believe and not to follow Russian bluffing, because there will be a lot of bluffing and chantage that should not scare American representatives, and I hope it will not.
Considering what you just said, sir, what would an acceptable peace deal look like to Ukraine then?
What is the best peace deal for us is complete, full restoration of Ukrainian territorial integrity, and by this, restoration of international law and international order. How it will be in practice, I don't know. But next thing, which is so important, is the security guarantees, because we want really peace and not a ceasefire. And only security guarantees can prevent Russia from new invasion. So that is very, very important.
Well, Russia seems to be advancing on the battlefield faster than in past months. Are you worried that the battle lines could change in Russia's favor before any ceasefire takes place?
Yeah, it can happen. The Russians are advancing. We can't say that there is no blitzkrieg, there is no breakthrough from Russians, but it's a kind of advancing in the style of the First World War, just taking some trench after trench, 100 meters after 100 meters. Yeah, it's painful for us, it's our land, but it looks like they are advancing, and for the moment, we can't stop them. For this, we need more weaponry now, and I hope we will receive it. This will help us enormously. More air defense, more air long-range capabilities, and more sanctions against Russia, because the only thing which gives them possibility to continue to advance is that their war chest is full, and more sanctions, especially against oil and gas. That is something we're looking for. And here, President-elect Donald Trump has a very good position from my point of view. As he said, I will drill, drill, drill. And that will lead to, that will definitely influence the oil prices, which will definitely influence Russia.
Well, on our previous guest on this episode, the Russian MP and TV host Evgeny Popov, told me there's no evidence that North Korean troops are supporting Russian forces in Kursk, as has been reported. Have you seen any evidence of their involvement?
In this case, I would like to ask what they're doing in Kursk region. So you see, even Russian so-called MP, because they don't have a parliament, it's not the way of their country, they're not democracy, so they just have something which they call the parliament. But even him, and he is quite famous Russian propagandist, even him is not arguing that North Koreans are in Kursk region. And you can open the map of the world and ask yourself what North Koreans are doing in thousands and thousands and thousands of miles and kilometers from their home.
Well, either way, with or without North Korean reinforcements, could Ukrainian forces withstand a substantial counterattack? And how important is that region as a bargaining chip in future negotiations?
It is important, and we are fighting there, trying to keep the lines. We will see how it will develop. In any way, Russians need to pay a lot of attention to this region, which is also good for us, which diminishes their possibility to pay attention to Ukrainian regions under attack. So we will see. It's the war. It's very hard to predict anything in the war.
Mr. Goncharenko, how much difference are long-range missiles making? And is it potentially too little, too late?
For the moment, it is too little, too late, but in any way, we welcome it and we are thankful for this. And we hope that more will arrive. They are making difference, and they can make much bigger difference if we will receive these missiles in a big number.
Now, one thing the former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has done, he's accused European leaders and the new Labour government in Britain of failing to do enough to make their continued support for Ukraine clear. Does he have a point? Do Ukrainians feel let down?
No. Well, about British government, we don't have any question. British government is supportive, like it was in the time of Prime Minister Johnson, which I'm very thankful for him, especially the first months of the invasion. His role was really great in uniting the world for supporting Ukraine. But then all other prime ministers, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, now Keir Starmer, they're doing a great job. United Kingdom is a real partner and real friend. But we need to remember that it's not a charity from the United Kingdom, but fulfilling of their responsibilities. In 1994, in December, so exactly 30 years ago, it was United Kingdom and the United States which made Ukraine to give up our nuclear weaponry to Russia. And they gave us security guarantees in the form of Budapest Memorandum, which is now we can only laugh on this because it happens that it's not a guarantee. But in any way, United Kingdom and the United States, they have a responsibility to help Ukraine in the situation we are. Because if not their influence 30 years ago, and if Ukraine would have nuclear weaponry that we had, never, ever what had happened with us would not happen.
Well, Boris Johnson also surprised a few people when he likened President Putin to Adolf Hitler and President Zelensky to Winston Churchill. Do you think that's a fair analogy?
The first part definitely is. The second, only history can give the answers. So I can tell you that it's not about just President Zelensky. It's about Ukrainian people and the fight of Ukrainian people that made also Zelensky as a representative of Ukrainian people really famous. But what is historical is not just one personality, which is President Zelensky. Again, we will finally estimate him later, but Ukrainian people and our will for freedom. And I think this is unprecedented.
As things have escalated, President Putin has talked about using his new Oreshnik hypersonic missiles to strike what he calls Ukraine's decision-making centers. What do you think he means by that, and how seriously are you taking such threats?
Now we see the big campaign by Putin, campaign of blackmailing and threatening of the world with these Oreshnik missiles. In reality, nobody knows how effective it was. I can tell you where Oreshnik strike happened, there is no big result. What does it mean? I don't know how effective really it is. Secondly, how many of these Oreshnik missiles really Russia has? We also don't know this. So it looks more like a bluffing from Putin. And in any way, I want to tell you, we're not afraid of his threats because we know with whom we deal. This is existential for us. And Russia is already using everything they can against us. So if they would have everything they have, except nukes they're using, and the only reason they're not using nukes, because it will be a physical end for themselves and for Putin included. That's why they're not using it.
Well, sir, give us some idea what effect the latest Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure has had on civilian life as winter approaches. And is this a marked escalation or simply a continuation of Russia's ongoing strategy?
It's continuation. They started this 2 years ago. It will be already the third winter like this. Russians, that is a Russian war playbook, their warfare style, to terrorize civilians, to make them suffer, to make their life unbearable. That's what they're doing. And they did it something like this in Syria in order to cause the migration waves. They did it in many other places before. So they continue this brutal style. What are the results? Millions of Ukrainians are without electricity today. There are problems with heating, with water supply. Yeah, but it's nothing new for us. That's something which happens already for the third winter.
On the point of strategy, we've been hearing reports and claims that Russia's also been involved in a kind of hybrid warfare involving sabotage and cyber attacks. The Kremlin has denied such strategy, but what's your understanding of the situation?
What to deny? Russia is making hybrid attacks, sabotage attacks, terroristic attacks throughout the whole world, especially in Europe. Salisbury, where they used chemical weapons, DHL airplane, which falls in Vilnius in Lithuania just days ago after there were information from European intelligence that Russia is going to attack DHL flights. All their attacks against depots, all their cyber attacks, all their attacks against infrastructure like cables, like internet, and so on and so on. So Russia is conducting a full-scale hybrid war against the civilized world.
Well, final thought, Mr. Goncharenko, what's your response to the popular podcaster Joe Rogan's derogatory comments about President Zelensky and Joe Biden, accusing them of escalating the conflict to a point that could trigger a nuclear world war?
I want to invite Mr. Rogan to Ukraine. I want to show him what's happening there on the ground. And I think in this case, his thoughts and his views will change significantly. So if you want to comment something, it's very good to know about this a little bit more than just to read something in media, especially in Russian media.
Well, Alexei Goncharenko, thank you very much for giving us a perspective on the show.
Thank you.
And that's all for this episode of the show. I'm Riz Khan from me and the team. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.